Terminator Dark Fate is just around the corner, and we're in part 3 of my series reviewing all of the Terminator franchise. That means today we're talking about Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your take on Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. This is, generally speaking, where people think that the franchise kind of went off the rails, and ever since we've been hoping that maybe the next Terminator movie will kind of get us back on track. Last night, the first reactions to Terminator Dark Fate kind of hit Twitter. They seem to be optimistic, but as for today, we're talking T3. Tell me what you thought down below. Also, so you know, I'm doing this review series along with my buddies Cody Leach and Durbin of Durbania. You can check out their reviews of the movie right up there after you kind of watch my review. If you do, head over to their channels, tell them in the comments that I sent you over there. With that said, I am a week late on this review. I was in California for 10 days. I actually watched this movie 2 weeks ago, wrote all my notes for it, and I just didn't have the time to do my review. And so I was talking with Cody. He's like, hey man, if we need to push back a week, that's fine. So that's what we did. If you want to blame someone for the delay, it's 100% on my shoulders that happened. But also that means that 2 days from this video posting on Thursday this week, the Terminator Salvation video will go up. That means we're getting 2 Terminator videos this week and 3 Terminator videos next week, which is pretty wild that is happening. With all that said, let's get started talking about the good. And the first thing that comes to mind is that this is a big blockbuster in the Terminator universe. And for me, that just makes for a fun type of movie. This is it's following up Terminator 2, this massive blockbuster that was beloved by fans and critics, and so they were given a lot of resources to try and make a follow-up to it, and you see the special effects, you see the budget on the screen for the film. Especially what comes to mind is the middle chase sequence with all the remote-controlled police cars and this big, gigantic truck thing that Arnold's like hanging on the back of it and being smashed through buildings. There's a lot of stuff like that inside of the film that are just big spectacle sequences that they could pull off with this film that just makes for fun entertainment. Also sequences like later in the film when you have the Terminatrix battling Arnold, the T-800 in a bathroom, the special effects, the ability to switch between CGI and practical and everything like that had gotten to that point where they could just do some really cool things where you see these superpower machines tossing each other around in ways that I thought was pretty cool inside of it. Also, when it comes on a plot level for the film, the final twist in it is actually pretty effective. When I was first watching the movie, I actually totally bought into the direction that John Connor was steering my thinking. So when it got to the final twist and reveal, once they get to that bunker, it caught me off guard. I was like, oh, okay, wow, they're really going for it. And it fit with everything that had happened before inside the film. But because we tend to be optimistic, hopeful people, we tried to follow along with what John Connor was feeling inside the film. When you get to the final moments, you go along with it. Like you're like, oh, it's effective. And really, some of the best stuff in the entire movie is the last 5 minutes of it. A lot of movies have great stuff all throughout the middle and in between, and then they don't stick the landing. This is a movie that, as we'll of course talk about, is pretty rocky for a number of different reasons throughout the runtime, but it does a really nice job of sticking the landing in a way that you feel the most stuff at the end. And that's a good thing to do. When it comes to all of the post-Terminator 2 sequels, for me, also, I've always somewhat, or not always, for the last several years, really perceived of them as fan fiction. Large budget fan fiction that Arnold Schwarzenegger himself frequently appears in. And when I watch them as that, I actually can get a pretty good kick out of them. They're all a lot of fun for me to just be in this universe with these robots, the type of spectacle that they bring, the ever watchable Arnold. I get a lot of entertainment out of even the ones that aren't very good. Spoiler alert, this being one of the ones that I don't think is very good, but still just I love this universe, these characters, the scenarios, so it's easy for me to enjoy, even though there's a whole lot of things about them that I don't enjoy. But I do watch this film and the others as essentially fan fiction inside of this universe. There's 2 Terminator movies. Fingers crossed, maybe next week we'll have 3 Terminator movies. As of right now, we got 2 movies and 3 pieces of fan fiction. With all that said, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. The big one here is the humor, and to be perfectly honest, the movie frequently makes me laugh. There's a lot of things in this film that cut the tension just right. They're so unexpected in the moment. They play off the iconic shots of the franchise before. Then it gets a chuckle out of me. The humor makes me laugh. Some of that is I just enjoy Arnold when he's doing cheesy humor. It works for me. Therefore, this movie's got a lot of that. Therefore, it hits and makes me laugh. But then the very obvious flip side to that, it feels really out of place inside of the franchise. And you're not really doing yourself a favor if the butt end of the joke is to make the Terminator look stupid. So, I mean, you in the opening sequences of the film, the Terminator walks into a bar playing off what happened in the previous film. It turns out that it's a ladies' strip club, and so they think that he's a male stripper. That's pretty funny. That's a pretty funny thing to do. It just feels really weird inside the franchise, and then they just keep doubling down on this joke. And so the guy, he runs into a stripper on stage. He's like, I need your clothes. And I mean, it plays like a fantastic SNL skit. If it was a bit on SNL that Arnold was doing this for that as the T-800, it would be a legendary Saturday Night Live sequence. But it's not. It's actually in the movie, and you're like, oh, we're pushing this awfully far. And talk to the hand and doing stuff like that. And he grabs the guy's hand and starts talking to his hand. He walks outside. He's got the star. Do I laugh? Yes, I do. Would it make a great sketch on SNL? Absolutely. Does it feel like it belongs in the franchise in light of the tone of the previous films? No, it feels like it doesn't flow organically. There's jokes in Terminator 2 that definitely put a grin on your face, but they're not so overtly joke setups as they are here. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger shooting the guys in the knees and Eddie Furlong being like, what'd you do that for? And he's like, he'll live. That's pretty funny, and it flows organically in light of the previous conversation they had without it being just such overt joke setups. And then they even do callback jokes, so you have them robbing a gas station. The person's like, are you going to pay for that? And he goes, talk to the hand. You have the T-800 actually saying, talk to the hand. Is it a little bit clever? Does it play well with a crowded room of people? Yeah. Does it feel out of place? Absolutely it does. And that stuff kind of happens all throughout the entire movie. They bring back the psychiatrist guy to do kind of this bit like, you see crazy things. And so I'm pretty mixed on it. The other thing that makes it mixed is that since there's a lot of plot issues with this film, things that I have issues with, we're about to get into, doing something that adds entertainment value covers up some of the story flaws, at least for me. Going back to, these are all fun fan fiction for me. And, it's essentially cooking with butter and sugar. Does it good cooking if you have to do that? No. But does it taste good to have a bunch of butter and sugar on stuff? Yeah. That's what this movie kind of does. It covers up its faults with a bunch of overt jokes on top of it that they do make me laugh. From there, let's move on to the negative. And unfortunately, there's quite a few problems with this film. Problem number one, I'll just kick it off talking about the Terminatrix. I appreciate that they want to do something different, and they try and do that with each one of these films, but I think the end result with where we're at right now, this whole idea of like, let's do a new Terminator in every single movie, has ended up hurting the franchise. And I think you initially start to see it here, where they're trying to come up with something new, so it's not just liquid metal, it's not just a cyborg, and so let's make her a girl, and she's young and pretty. Okay, that's different. That kind of works. She seems far less intimidating than Arnold Schwarzenegger walking around, so that could be disarming and make her a better killer of humans. But then they give her all these weird powers that are like, what is that? So they have her like call a modem and make sounds with her mouth. maybe I don't know how modems work entirely. I mean, I had modems back in the day, but I don't know if, like, can you do that? Can you just talk to a modem by making noises? Is that how they work? Then she has the power of making her boobs bigger. She has a ray gun inside of her arm. And then she can control cars by remote control. And you can see with what they were going with this idea of remote controlling stuff and being able to, but it doesn't make any sense because, like, for a wheel to move, there has to be something in it that does that. There has to be like a motorized function inside of there that doesn't appear just because she can remote control, like has radar to connect with them or whatever, laser to connect with it or anything like that. So you're watching some of that stuff, like she's controlling all these cars. Like, I don't think this makes a whole lot of sense, and I don't know how it ties back to other things inside of it. Then they give her this power where she can lick blood as a DNA test, which once again, they like try and make it like a sensual thing, and like the face, like she licks it, and then she's like, when she finds John Connor, and you're like, that's just such a weird direction to go with this. Of all the ways that they could scan things, why would robots design themselves to be sensual about licking blood? That's an odd thing to do inside of the film. From there, we can talk about just the casting in general. Very weird. Very weird casting. I just don't really know what they were going for with the people that they cast. But in general, I think that they had a pretty terrible casting director for this film. The biggest problem with this one is Nick Stahl as John Connor. I don't have anything against Nick Stahl as an actor. I haven't seen him in a whole lot of things. But in this, he just simply does not feel like John Connor. He doesn't have the screen presence. He doesn't draw you in. He doesn't command a room. He doesn't have any of the things that you think of when you think John Connor, and he doesn't even feel like Eddie Furlong 10 years older. It doesn't have any of the things that you would assign to a John Connor, whether young, youthful, rebellious. He feels like just kind of like this wayward guy that's kind of a loser, and we keep being told that he's a big deal, but he doesn't really do anything inside of the movie to show that potential, show the fact that he's been trained in all of this stuff. And that's very frustrating thing about this movie, that you spend so much time with a John Connor that you're like, this just doesn't feel like John Connor to me. Then you have Claire Danes as kind of the female lead inside of it. And it's good that they make her a strong character without her coming off too much too much like anything. She doesn't feel like a cliche movie female, either the action hero or the submissive wife or the damsel in distress. She doesn't fall easily into any stereotype, but she also doesn't feel all that particularly defined either in a compelling way. We're told Catherine Brewster is this really important person that marries John Connor and that they lead the resistance, but even when she kind of does stuff where she grabs a gun and fires things, it doesn't play entirely right. You still don't feel it. And that's kind of the thing. All the characters, they just don't feel like what they're supposed to feel like. Even her dad, who's the military boss guy, comes off kind of indecisive. He doesn't feel strong in the room as most kind of these military type guys in these roles do. Her boyfriend is just kind of this forgettable guy that's just kind of like, hey, dopey around her. And it's just very odd that you would have a movie like this. This franchise is kind of known for having a lot of great performances from different people that are pretty iconic. And even the films after this the movies in general aren't all that well regarded. Pretty great cast, or they got a lot of really good people in them that do something interesting with it, or they're miscast but in a very profound sort of way. This one, they're just very dull, miscast people inside of it. Another issue here is the movie can be very tone deaf. Like, calling back to what I mentioned about the humor, in the climax of the movie, everybody kind of converges on this one room. Evil Terminator takes out Catherine's father. Arnold goes to battle with evil Terminator, later shoots her down an elevator shaft. Catherine runs over, holding her dying father in his arms, and then it cuts to Arnold and he goes, "She'll be back." And it plays it both as a, doing the iconic phrase with a twist and playing it a little bit as a joke while a character's dying. Like it literally, they were so out of control with the tone that they didn't realize, if you want to do the she'll be back line, there's 100 points in time in this movie they could have done it, that it wouldn't cut the important tone and emotion of someone dying. They picked the one moment in the movie where someone is like mourning the loss of their father in their arms. She'll be back. That's just bad writing or direction or editing. Whoever decided to cut that in there, bad. But probably the thing that makes this movie just seem incredibly forgettable is that it's just a template Terminator movie. It takes the formula from the previous two movies and just inserts in new Terminators. And I mean, the robots send back evil Terminator. The Resistance sends back someone good to save someone who's been targeted by the evil Terminator. At the beginning, Terminator kills a bunch of people, and then it's a road trip movie. It just copies what the previous two movies did without adding anything new on top of it. Like Terminator 2 kind of follows the template of Terminator 1, but Terminator 1 very much so left the door open for a Terminator 2, and when Terminator 2 came along, it added a whole lot of new layers on top of the mythology. It added new kind of themes into it, emotions inside of it. It's a shift in genre from like slasher horror sci-fi to big action blockbuster sci-fi with just doses of horror inside of it. So Terminator 2 builds off the first film in a very natural and organic ways and brought a bunch of things to the table. And it's a movie that had a lot of things to say about humanity that made it have a bunch of emotional resonance. Terminator 3 follows the template, but really doesn't have a whole lot to add inside of the mix. Also, Terminator 2 closed things out. The way that story is designed is a hopeful ending that there's not an obvious open door. So Terminator 3 had to like kick the door open, which sort of meant a change to the mythology and the worldview from what James Cameron originally had established and had in mind. But because Terminator 3 doesn't add anything new, it just kind of changes the mythology, does the same sort of stuff again, then you have to rely on what entertainment value to have and what new gimmicks do you have with the Terminators and does the humor work? And they don't work all that well. Certainly not as well as the previous movies, in which case the movie doesn't have anything to offer that enhances the franchise, takes it to another level. It's just more Terminator stuff, but not as good. It isn't clearly about anything. It just exists so that we can have another Terminator movie. And for me, it also commits one of the biggest movie sins that you can do, which is to make a sequel that undoes the ending of the previous movie and make an inferior sequel. So Alien 3 is one of my most hated movies of all time because it undoes the ending of the movie Aliens. There's a victory at the end of Aliens, and between films that gets undone. And built into the mythology of this film, for this film to exist, there has to be a change of kind of the mythology, the idea of Judgment Day, whereas we said very clearly in Terminator 2, the future hasn't been written yet. Like that was like this very clear idea in the first two films. And then in this one, Terminator shows up, or Arnie shows up and he says, Judgment Day is inevitable. It hasn't been written. It is inevitable. Those are two different ideas, and they had to change the mythology so that this movie could exist, and it's an inferior film, so it hurts the franchise. It's not just an inferior film. It hurts the franchise with what they did. For me, that's one of the biggest movie sins that you can commit. Real quick, before I give you my final score on this one, tell me what you thought down below in the comment section. Do you kind of hate this one as much as a whole bunch of people, or actually kind of like this one? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Also, remember, after this video, check out Cody Leach's and Durbin's review of the Terminator movies right up there. I've got a whole playlist myself of my Terminator rankings, so if you haven't watched my previous ones, you can see that up there. And after The new one comes out, which will come out next week. I'll have a review. I'm going to rank all the Terminator movies again, and then I'm going to do a spoiler review, I believe, with Cody Leach. So be on the lookout for a whole bunch of content next week. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines is a perfect example of why on my rating system I have both a letter and a number. Because I can look at this movie and objectively be like, this movie has very big problems. It does not work. It is a rehash of previous better films. But I can also be someone that's a fan of the genre and very easily entertained by this type of movie. And as I mentioned before, I view these as fan fiction, and as fan fiction, I kind of get a kick out of it. So for me, as just a movie in general, overall, this is not a film that I would recommend, and I don't think it's a good film. But as someone that enjoys these movies, I actually do recommend it as something that I just enjoy. And that's why I have the two different scores. It does that sort of thing with this film. But yeah, it hurts the mythology. There's a lot of story problems. The humor, very misplaced inside of it. There's a lot of bad casting. I love the franchise though. It's a C overall, but it's a 6.5 out of 10 on the entertainment scale. If you're a huge fan of the franchise, I mean, you gotta watch it. Otherwise, you can sit this one out. Just go rewatch one of the first two films. Be sure to tell me what you thought down below. Check out my buddy's reviews of this, wherever the link is for that. You can see my other Terminator reviews right over there. Come back next week for a whole lot of Terminator content. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.